Okay, so from a logistics point of view, if we want to just jump right into the agenda and everything, we can do that, or we can just, is there any other planning updates we need to do? Or do you want to save that till the end? And Betsy, we do that at the end, just logistics of projectors and tables and things like that.
Let's
Save
do it
that
at
till
the end. Yeah.
Okay, great. With that, I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay. And I have an outline basically of what we're going to be looking at on, can everyone see this? I'll do full screen.
Yep.
Okay. So, kind of similar things that we've talked about, as I just mentioned, this is a focus on placemaking. This is just an overview agenda that's much more detailed for us today, but this is the basic layout. So sorry, there's lots of words here, but this is just for the committee's information. And, it'll be much more pictorial and not like this for the community meeting. So basically we're planning around 90 minutes to 95 minutes, so an hour and a half, hour and a half to hour and 45, maybe something like that. We definitely want to keep it below 2.
Yes.
People get tired, but we can't quite squeeze it in an hour. So that's where we are. If you have strong feelings about that, let me know, because we'll adjust. And some of these things we can do faster or do in a less organized fashion or less formal fashion, put it that way. So there's welcome and Go ahead, Susan.
I was going to say, I think that's fine. An hour and a half.
Okay, great. So welcome and introductions. I think we can sort of do that, but I really think Susan or someone from the committee should just do an opening remarks, like where we are, and kind of ground this in the 2030 committee's work, if that's okay. That might just be a minute, and introduce the committee. The design teams will introduce ourselves. We have a project overview, that schedule that we show you all the time. I'm going to show that to you in just a minute, but it's the biggest picture schedule that talks about our work and the overlap with SLR's work, and emphasizing the 3 community meetings, because the 2030 committee work is sort of in committee format, but the community engagement sessions are the public pieces. So I think we'll emphasize that in the schedule. We'll go over the goals, which I want to review with you one last time tonight. We've been refining those, and we only had a couple wordsmithing changes to do last time, and just so we have those goals clear. And then we're going to do just a little bit of the discovery highlight process, which we've been doing with you. Discovery is technically complete now, but we're kind of mining for inspiration, right? We're creating a new place, and we have to mine for inspiration, and we're looking to historical context, geography, as we've mentioned, and then the sort of similar places. What do we know around the state that we like? So we can integrate the work that the 2030 committee has already done. We don't want to start from ground zero. We want to start from the work that you've already done, and then place options and discussions out from that point forward. So that's the kind of overview that'll involve a little bit of Danielle's discussion, a little bit of my discussion. I'm thinking that's going to take around 15 minutes. It might only be 12 or 13 minutes, but about 15 minutes.
And we're starting at what time again?
It starts at 6, but that's one logistics thing I want to talk about. Do we let people get food and stuff from 6 to 6:30, and we start at 6:30 and go to 8? Or do we start right at 6? Because if people don't eat, it might get kind of ugly. I don't know. So, what do you guys think is the best process there?
I was thinking you got to give them a window of time to get something to drink and maybe something to eat. So either 6:15 to 6:30, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. So we'll be there early, and we'll be all set up. So
And what time do you want us there?
By 6, I would say.
Oh, not before. Okay, that's fine.
Well, if you want to come before, that'd be great, because then I was just saying to the group before everybody got online, usually about 40 people show up at these things. I don't know, Jason, what your experience is like. Big towns, small towns, somewhere it's always around 40 people. I don't know why. We're planning
I put this on Facebook, on several different Facebook pages that are oriented around the flats.
Okay.
So I'll redo that tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't want to do it today because they'll forget, but I'll do it tomorrow, maybe in Wednesday. And
it's hard to predict. So we're going to bring enough stuff for like 80 people.
Okay,
And so we have some paper, so we're going to be unfortunately killing some trees, maybe unnecessarily, but I think we have to prepare for the fact that we might have more and be realistic that probably will be around 40 people. We have 4 consultants, so Danielle and myself and Jason and Sarah will be there, or Sam, excuse me, will be there, and we'll divide ourselves around tables. And it's our idea that we pair each one of us with one of you from the committee, and we sort of tag team. And that in some of the activities that I'll just describe, we move from table to table rather than moving a group of 6 or 8 or 10 people, depending on the table configuration. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what tables we have. We're going to have to get there. And Jason and Sam, if you guys can get there around 5 o'clock with us, we can just call an audible and you know, figure it out as best we can. But that's always how
one
it goes.
thing is I have a hearing in West Hartford. So Sam from our office and Fiona, who has been working on kind of the transportation analysis, Sam and Fiona will be there first, and I will come as quickly as I can from West Hartford. I should be able to be there by 6:15.
Okay, great. So that's kind of the lay of the land. We thought we'd pair one of us with one of you. I'm going to step away and do sort of macro kind of like management and directions, and then go back to a table, and then we'll kind of move everybody around. But the idea is to keep everybody engaging with different people. And I've just found sometimes it's faster to move us than to move a group of people. So, you know, we just got some little tricks in our bag. So we basically really only have 3 activities, but they're kind of broken down into 5. The overarching activity that's, I think, going to run through the entire night is the naming the district activity. Remember, we started off with the flats, or, you know, village was out there and it got kind of kiboshed within the community, in the committee kind of quickly. But I have a list of names tonight because we want to put a list up there. And then this is going to happen in 3 parts. We're going to introduce naming the names, and it's going to be on a flip chart. Then we're going to have a bunch of markers and let people add whatever names they want. And then the third step is people going to come back and put stickers on their favorite 2 names. Okay. And then we'll just do an assessment, but maybe someone will come up with a great name. Maybe the flats will stick, you know, who knows, right? We've been all kind of by default calling it the flats for like lots of obvious reasons. But so that's going to run throughout the night and happen between the break periods of the other 2 main activities. The second main activity is what we call, in our line of work, a visual preference survey. So it's setting out the goals and then setting out categories, and then having people look at images and then prioritizing their images and writing a little bit about what they like about that, right? That's kind of this roundtable thing. Each of us will take a category from placemaking categories like nature forward landscape, street configurations, you know, building types, and character. And then we'll walk around to different tables and bring everybody through that process. Okay. That's going to take, it's not a heavy lift, but that we think is going to take about 40 minutes. And then 35 or 40 minutes for the third main activity, which is discussing and diagramming on a plan catalytic locations in the project area. And we talked a little bit about this last time, and that's like, what are those nodes or those points where people think if we did something there that was really awesome, that would be a spark to ignite place or engagement or economic development or whatever. But people have really good instincts about where interventions should happen, and we want to mine everybody's thoughts for that, right? So we talked about the old Crest used car empty dealership building, right, as one option. And then that empty bit of property along the Litchfield Turnpike next to the Phillips gas station where there's a connection to the river. And then we've talked about Selden Street, right, as a zone that maybe this could begin in. So we're going to feed the discussion, the 4 of us or 5 of us, as the case may be, with 3 folks from SLR. These catalytic locations, we'll talk offline about this. So we have like a basic vocabulary of a starting point. And then each of us will just guide a discussion help people diagram on trace. So we'll have paper, we'll have a map, about 4 of them or 6 of them spread out, and people can just group around them and engage in a discussion. Then what would be really great is at the end, if the groups would share out just their main ideas about that. Okay. So this is orchestrated with different types of interactions and different types of discussions for all different people of different styles and levels of engagement, right? So people are too shy, don't want to talk, can just do the surveys or just compete at the tables. People who want to share an idea can stand up and say that. So it's a great way to just get everybody engaged. Then I think the last part of the night is we'll just review all the stickers on the name, maybe circle the 2 or 3 that seem to be the preference, and we'll just take that away. We don't want to come to any concrete conclusions like at that point. We just want, you know, where we're beginning to build consensus, right? Does this all make sense as an agenda for the evening?
Yep. Are we prepared for people to go off on tangents?
We're going to try really hard to take people's comments and questions when tangents come up and note them down. We'll have a second flip chart where we'll make this is how we manage tangents in community meetings. We have a flip chart where we'll say, that's a great idea. We're going to write it down and include it, but we have too much to do tonight to go into a long discussion about it. But then it's true, we've marked it, we've put it in the agenda. Then we'll review it with the 2030 committee meeting at our next meeting and see if that's a little subcommittee project for one of you all to take up or something else to do. But the important thing is to hear everybody's voice, mark it down, note it, so everybody feels heard and is heard, and then decide, you know, the next steps. But we have to keep really focused because an hour and a half is pretty tight for everything we have tonight.
Yep.
To do on Thursday night. Does that make sense? Any questions, concerns?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, you probably said it and I missed it. What are the tools that are going to be at the table to sort of spark these conversations?
I'm going to go through that right now. It's going to be an 11 by 17 packet of images and a survey sheet.
Okay.
And then there'll be a big map, an 18 by 24 map of the project area that we're going to print and mount on foam core board, just so if the tables are wonky or something. And then there'll be rolls of trace paper and markers and stickers.
Okay.
The toolkit of community meetings, basically.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All
So
right.
this agenda looks good. What I want to go through tonight is now just the goals, the refined goals that we'll present and where they came from, because I think it's important for the community to relate them back to the community survey and the business owner survey, which is where we got this information from. And then show you the visual preference survey, and then remind you of the map that we'll use for the catalytic locations, kind of little design charrette or diagramming exercise.
Okay.
The one thing I'll say is this is an ideas night. It's not a solutions night. And as you're helping to facilitate the table, you know, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Ideas aren't solutions. We're going to try to pull everybody back to ideas, right, tonight. The conversations, if you're helping to facilitate, might be around a solution. It's just second nature for humans, especially when thinking about the built environment, to describe a solution. I want a gazebo here, right? Let's do a gazebo. Well, sometimes a gazebo isn't appropriate, but you can go back and say, what is it about a gazebo that you want? Is it a place for people to gather? Is it all weather? Does it allow for music to be performed? Like, pull it back from the solution of gazebo, which is sort of meaningless. It's just a solution until you know the purpose or the idea behind that. And we'll say this to everybody in our intro slides.
Oh, good.
But you all as facilitators, so you'll be reminded one more time. So it'll be like the 3rd or 4th time you've heard it. So that's, you know, good. And then all of us know, SLR knows this and we know this. So we'll be able to keep everybody, you know, say, oh, a gazebo is great. What's a gazebo for? Because it could be for selling vegetables, or it could be for, like, you know, having music. Those are completely different things. So what's the intention? What do you think? What's the important activity that a gazebo represents for you? And that's what we want to know, because those ideas that can then be brought forward to an appropriate solution within a budget, within a form, within a safety parameter that we need to accomplish, all of those things. Okay. All right. We'll say that many times during the night, so don't worry, but it'll, when we say that, it'll spark your memories and you guys will remember, and it'll make your participation in the facilitation easier. Okay. So this is a general schedule where we're going. We've gotten bumped out a little bit because we realized we couldn't do the community meeting in late July or August, which makes total sense. So we're here at the beginning of September. We had talked with SLR about their kickoff sometime around the end of October, beginning of November. But then I think that pushes the SLR concepts meeting maybe out to January or December before the holidays. So we need to talk about this as a committee before we show this, but I just put something together. So if this looks completely wrong after meeting number 2, shout out now. And we can change it or discuss it just while we're all together, because SLR's here too, which is great.
You're talking about the timing here, right? Yeah.
I wanted to wrap by the end of the year, but I'm thinking in being fair to SLR about this, given the fact that we got pushed back, that their meetings are getting pushed back down, all their analysis and everything is all done. Like we've been talking about it, but they're going to use that to kick off their meeting number 2. But in fairness, they need to do their master plan, and then they need to do budgets, and then they need to present it like it may, I don't know, Jason, speak up here because.
Yeah. We are looking to have everything done by December.
Okay.
So as you said, Laura, our analysis is pretty much done. So I think we could have the 3rd meeting somewhere around the 2nd week of December.
Okay.
You're not going to want to do that, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem with that then is, are people really going to come back at the end of January? It will have been November, December, and then they're coming back in January, 3 months since they've seen the concepts.
Well, given that by the end of the year is just a little over 90 days, and there are 2 major holiday and traveling seasons within those 90 days, I'm not so sure we have a choice.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, it's just not realistic to try and jam this in the week before Christmas, it seems to me.
Okay, so why don't we plan on doing community meeting 2 with the place-based concepts, analysis, connectivity ideas sometime in November, and then we'll come back in January.
I mean, that's just my opinion. Do other people feel differently?
No, I agree. It's going to be challenging to do it right before the holidays.
Yeah.
So we push it to January. It gives us a little more time to get organized. And if we're presenting interesting information, people are going to come.
Right.
Yeah.
On us to do a good job.
The Thanksgiving 2nd meeting, it'd be great if we could do it before Thanksgiving. I'm going to be away the week after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's nothing that says that we can't ask the town to put in the community newsletter and on the website something like the Woodbridge 2030 Committee wishes everybody a wonderful holiday season.
Yeah.
Don't forget, we're going to be around for X, Y, or Z, just so that we're sort of present in everybody's consciousness.
Good idea.
You know, cheers, however you want to do it, but that's a way to sort of remind people that we haven't completely evaporated.
And I like that too, because Jason, to your point about too much time between meeting 2 and meeting 3, if we can push meeting 2 into the 2nd week of November before everybody checks out for holiday, we're over the September holidays and all of that before everyone checks out, then it's only, a month and a half until January. And
Right.
it just feels like September, November, January, and it's every 2 months we're having a meeting. So that maybe is okay if that
Right.
works.
Right.
Okay, good.
All right, so I'll shift these dates just a little bit, but you can see on the graphic, the community meetings are emphasized because we're presenting this to the community audience in this, so that's their meeting. There's more meetings with the 2030 committee that aren't highlighted here, of course, that we'll be working in
Right.
between. And then everything in gray is discovery is what we've already done, and I just highlighted, background analysis is SLR's work, that's complete. We had a kickoff, we had our field trips. We had our 2030 meeting ideas already with the 2030 community and then committee. And then now here we are at the first community meeting. So, okay.
Right.
Is there any other information Susan, you or the committee want to have on this macro calendar, or does this feel like the right amount of information for everybody?
Looks good to me.
It looks good to me. I think it generates questions, and I think that the questions are great. We're excited that you have questions. We'll all learn more as we go forward and meet the calendar, kind of a thing.
Great. Okay. And Jason, you can just swing back to me if you want me to shift any of these things, or if I got the wording wrong on any of your deliverables or anything like that, just grab the screen right now or send me a note, and I'm happy to edit, as it were.
Got it.
Okay. Okay, so goals is the next task for this committee tonight. Remember that we got these original bullets from the community survey, the resident surveys, and the business owner surveys, because this committee and the EDC has already done lots and lots of community engagement in the form of surveys and polling. And we wanted to make sure that we connected this effort to all of those previous efforts, so people don't feel like, oh my gosh, I've done this and I'm doing this for the 112th time. But it was really great. We mined a lot of really good information out of that. And that information, along with the work of the committee, we've kind of come up with these project goals, right? The first is about character of place, which is really an important thing to make a unique place for Woodbridge, right? That's safe and connected. And the term that we've come away with is nature forward. That came through all the resident surveys. It's a distinguishing factor. It ties geography to history, to culture, and people's activity interests. Lots of interest in outdoor and nature forward activities. So, and it also gives nod to sustainable strategies, stormwater management around the West River, things that already are happening from an infrastructure point of view. So it's kind of a neat way, the nature forward term, to kind of wrap everything together. I don't think we had any revisions on that last time. The second goal is really about building uses and typologies, and this begins to feed not only the character and the character imagery that we'll be doing, but also begins to give clues to the EDC about where they may go out and take on the next steps of this afterwards, which is encouraging a combination of residential and commercial development and recreational uses that focus on families and all ages. And this seems a little bit weird. It's like, why say all ages? But in Woodbridge, it's worth noting, focusing on families and those activities, and then the diverse range of all age groups, around. So this gives a nod to mixed use development, which is getting more comfortable for people, as long as we get the scale of it right. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time in the meeting. We don't want street walls, right? We don't want Ridgefield from our experience. We don't want dense, busy street walls. We want slightly more low key, less dense, but still mixed use. Okay, is where we think we're heading. We'll get everybody's feedback. And then develop a small business focused managed district that is an area destination and provides for resident needs, both and tax-based growth. And this we edited last time to make sure that it wasn't too much of a regional destination or got too big and too, like, it's an area destination. And so that's the revision we made last time. So do these still feel right to people, or are there any other thoughts that we should, we can continue to refine these goals. I think we've got the 3 goals generally outlined. We can tweak them. We can let some of SLR's work inform them a little bit if we need to in the end, but we're generally, comments, thoughts?
Hang on, I'm reading them again.
These are the same ones that we approved last time, right?
Yeah, this is the 3rd time we reviewed and looked at these.
Yeah, I thought those were good.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts?
No, I think it looks good.
Okay. Great. Next, so we're going to take everyone through the evening, how we mined for clues about unique character and how we're going to develop something that's uniquely Woodbridge, because that's really important. When you take the effort to make a place, you don't want it to just look like it could be Austin, Texas, or as cool as Austin is, or, Cape Cod. We want it to be Woodbridge. And so what is it that's unique about Woodbridge that we can pull together? So we're going to go through this both and history. You guys have seen all of this. where we land on the nature. We're going to do about a 5-minute summary of all of that, including our field trips, to where we come to this conclusion of a nature forward that maximizes geographical resonance, right? This is the place between the two hills or the two rocks, if you will, because you have West Rock, but there's also, what do we call the hill, by the way, that goes up Fountain Street? Is there a name for that where the quarry used to be?
West,
For
What
the, where the trestle is? Where the highway is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a hiking trail back there. I don't know if they're what the name.
don't know what that hill is called.
well, anyway, there are two hills, right? And this little plain created by the river sometime way back in geological history is the spot we are. So maximizing that geographical resonance, an informal but tidy character, I think, is the phrase that we've been thinking of in our heads. Not too formal, not too made up, not too pretentious, but tidy is good, right? And not too dense, open and airy. So these are the main characteristics that we're presenting for people's reaction and input and development.
And can we auction off to name the hill for some like revenue?
That's a great idea. Someone can take that on. Well, that could feed in, Terry, to this next thing, which is we want to put together names for this district that everybody can actually begin to like add to and riff on. And this is the activity that will flow through the entire evening, and we'll touch it at 3 specific points. But we want to invite people to come up to the flip chart, add some names, you know, think about it. So these are some things we want to put up there as a starting point. If there's anything that anyone really hates, we shouldn't put up there that anything that no one can support, period, right? But we should have a few. So of course the flats is just been how we've been kind of evolving to call this place. District. West River, somebody mentioned tying it to the West River in one of our meetings, ultimately tying it to West Rock or tying it to the tunnel as a locating device. The cool thing about the flats is it talks about the geography and it talks about, you know, how people recognize it, even driving on the 15. Sorry, my California colloquialisms come in there. I put determiners before every roadway, but when driving on the Wilbur Cross, you get it. I know, Susan. You probably didn't even hear it. Everybody's like, the 15, what are you doing? So it's self-explanatory and it's cool and it kind of riffs. And we also talked about sort of reclaiming and empowering that name as part of the history of Woodbridge. So thoughts like definite cross-offs, ads, where do we want to start with this? Or is this a good place to start?
It's a good start. It's a good starting.
Is this what the participants are going to see?
Yeah, we're going to write these in hand, by
Okay,
hand on a flip chart.
okay.
And we'll have lots of markers and we'll invite other people to come up and write whatever name they think is cool.
I have a pet peeve.
Okay.
I still believe in capital letters.
Okay,
So the capital F flats,
yeah.
capital
We
W.
do everything with lowercase.
I know.
Graphical thing. Yeah.
Style versus grammar. Okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I actually, you're going to get some interesting suggestions, I think. So I would leave this and let people build on it. I think this looks fine. Certainly not definitive, but okay.
I just want to make sure there's nothing on here that, like in the way that people had reaction to village, like, you know, village doesn't feel right. Is there anything that just doesn't feel right to anybody here, or does this, it's good and solid?
Well, someone's going to add Woodbridge Business District, I have a feeling. Is that what you meant by Woodbridge District?
I was thinking like the district, which could be confused with the district in New Haven. I think a word that's a single word is just stronger and punchier than having too many words, personally.
Yeah,
And I think business district is just sort of lackluster, to be honest. You know,
I do too. No, I do.
It's not a name, it's kind of a category, right?
Yeah. It's like I told you, we should call it the errands district because everybody does their errands there, but who would want to go there? Right. Okay.
So I'm happy to take off we can just say district.
I would leave it just as it is.
I would
And
leave it.
let people look at it and say, I hate it, I love it, change it, do this, let
Okay.
them give
Great,
us some ideas.
great. All right, excellent. And SLR team members, if you have any thoughts that we missed, please add them.
I think 5 is good. I like Woodbridge Center.
Well, the
'Cause then
center
people
is
say, "Oh, go down to
already
the center."
exists. The center is the heart of the town, is the town
Right.
center, so it can't be center.
Mm.
Because that's confusing, right? We're trying to move something away from Woodbridge.
We
Center.
actually, yes, so when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we changed the senior center to the center, and all of our newsletters references it as the center now. So I think that would be really confusing. I do like the sound of the center, but they took it, so.
Yeah, and this old center elementary school is now your town center where the library is and the day, everything is in the center building. It just, that's already claimed, unfortunately. But if there's another word, another synonym for center, let's think about it. But all right, that's the tricky thing about this, because we're a kind of a bi-located
Mhm.
center, because the business, just the sort of functions of the town are on the hill in the center, and then this is like business.
But one of the things, Laura, that we've talked about, and this is not to add to the list at all, and I think maybe it bears some relevance to your introductory remarks,
Mhm.
but the idea that we don't want 2 Woodbridges. We want it to be, we don't want to think of this as that's one Woodbridge and this is a different Woodbridge. It's a way, as I said to somebody the other day, we're not just a town, we're a community. And that's the thing that we want to try and emphasize as we uplift this a little bit. Am I right? Is that correct? So,
Great.
I get what you mean by center. But I don't want it to be like a demarcation. That's what and I think you're going to hear some of that from folks. We don't want that demarcation anymore. So anyway, that's why the flats works, because it doesn't say the district.
Right.
So we'll see. Okay.
Got it. Sorry, Jason, didn't mean to jump all over that center. It's ground we've covered, and you
Fine,
haven't
it's fine.
been privy to it. All righty. Okay, so now I want to show you the visual preference survey worksheets. So these are 11 by 17 sheets. It's kind of hard to read, probably on Zoom. Each color, green, orange, blue, and purple, relates to a sheet of images. And these are the questions that we want people to evaluate relative to those images. So these are the 4 categories that have to do with landscape, streetscape, built environment, and character. And each of the, amenities and activities. And we'll be querying these and discussing these things in groups with each of us, as I mentioned, a 2030 member and a professional consultant together talking about this. And the thought is everyone will have their packet, everyone will have a pen or a pencil with them, and they'll kind of put themselves at a table. And just to make things move faster, us consultant and 2030 facilitators will move from table to table to help people answer these questions, okay? There's a couple of reminders at the top under each title about what this is about. Nature forward, you'll see that word now phrase appearing. Landscape, rural, open, and airy, right? This came from our work together, our preference for Kent, and a lot of the density and character that came from that. Nature forward streetscape, we carried it over even to the streetscape. Tidy, casual, and safe. You'll see that the questions of the surveys in the first 2 categories are broken down. And this is meant to help us, but it's also meant to help SLR. There's major thoroughfares like Litchfield Turnpike and Amity Road. And then there's the side streets and the slower residential streets, right, that cross. There's the grain as the cross grain. So we want to get people's instincts and responses in each of those contexts, right? So there's 2 categories for those. Built environment, we're talking about mixed use, which is residential and commercial. We want to emphasize no street wall. We don't want to do 0 lot line, 4-story, cornice topped. Like we're not we're thinking we're not going for that amount of density. That doesn't feel like Woodbridge. That feels too intense. No street wall on small scale, and we have some images for that. And then we also want to query and dig into like activities and amenities. What can we do to activate some of these spaces that are sort of the quasi-public realm, or what can be done to sort of bring activities there, and just people's preferences. So does this make sense to everybody? Pretty straightforward questions. So then these are the image sheets that go along with each. So each image sheet is broken down with a couple of words: character, density, and how integrated landscape is with in particular vehicular areas. And then there's a second set of words, cultivated, pastoral, and pollinator type things, right? Density, open, mixed, or dense, and how integrated: landscape apart from built environment, blended, or used as edges and barriers. Okay. So that's the first sheet. The second sheet is around streetscape. We have this big issue of safety and cars, right? And we learned in Kent, I think, Chris, you might have even said, it's like, look, they park on the street on a state highway, Route 7. Interestingly enough, using cars parked on a street edge with a sidewalk is a way to help people feel safe walking on that sidewalk. Jason and his crew have already done some street sections to show us where that can work and where that can't work, because a lot of the property boundaries are right up on the DOT setback limits. But it'd be interesting to know where people feel like, yes, let's park on the street and use that as a safety barrier, right, to pedestrian activity. Or are there other elements such as fencing or edges, or landscape elements like bioswales that also have the benefit of managing stormwater and other things, right? There's fixtures and a fixture and furnishing vocabulary like bike racks and lighting and benches that we'll all have, in these questions just about other things that people might like to see in the public realm. And then there's the important question of paths, and assuming that all of the paths are safe for access and use, you know, could we look at a loose surface or a more rural character path in some areas, or the mixed surface path that we saw in image number 8 in Litchfield, which everybody had a great response to? It was chip seal. So it was firm, but it felt not like concrete. And we definitely said, not the stamped concrete stuff that feels everywhere USA, but you know, where are we on this in the spectrum of possibility, right? And then in built environment, we're going to talk about building types. We're definitely privileging the non-street wall response, but the large scale to small scale independent building that has probably a shaped roof and some windows that face facade and engage the landscape around. So the first one we're calling types is like mom and pop. It's the old mom and pop store where there's retail on the bottom and maybe housing up above. I know this is a type that already exists, or you know, some of you are working on making exist, given new zoning. The non-street wall but denser is option number 2. This is the building we saw in Litchfield that we thought is a completely appropriate scale for Woodbridge. It's still standalone. It still has oxygen around it. It creates a place because of its shape. This is a U-shaped building. We're just seeing one half of it that looks like an L here, right? And then it went through to parking on the back. So it's a great typology for a lot of the setup that we have. In fact, we're even imagining, for example, that, you know, where the cat veterinarian is and the nails place and the dry cleaner, that building could be renovated into something that looks like this by adding a second story of housing above, adding a roof to it, putting the parking in the back, and engaging the front space for outdoor public use, right? So we're trying to think of things like this isn't the miracle stretch, like it'll never happen. We want to go in and say, hey, some of the existing buildings could be renovated to do this really easily. And so we're trying to be clear with those typologies. And then there's the kind of larger scale barn inspired, right? Think of New England Brewery. It's a huge footprint building. Having some kind of manufacturing like that is also a destination like a brewery is a no-brainer, but it can be developed or articulated in a way that helps ground it in place just a little bit more rather than it feeling like a metal building sitting in a parking lot. So we want to get to all scales of typologies, but you can see that they're all freestanding, lots of air and sky around them, and parking probably in the back. Do those types feel comfortable and make sense to all of you based on our research and conversations? Okay. Street edge, there's lots of ways to deal with that. Landscaped, layered, and inside out, emphasizing the inside out. So that's kind of a pretty clear preference. And then character, informal, that's the first image of Westville, right? We said it's like Westville's got no architecture, but it's got this really informal, really clear vibe, right? And you all said, we're not Westville, but it's really clear and it's a place. So we like that. A rural character, it's a standalone building, and riffing on this sort of agri-industrial roots of the flats, as it were, with the old factories and manufacturing and agriculturally formed buildings back to the barn inspired. Everybody understand the built environment references? Okay. And then activities and amenities. And this is just a way to think about where we can actually program activities into the quasi-public space that might build on activities that we already have, right? Some of our analysis shows there's already recreational fields, there's trails, there's a huge interest in the community to have more of that, to be able to ride bikes with down, from residential areas into this zone, go to games, go do something, and then ride bikes or hike back, right? There's a huge interest in that. We know we have, so nature trails is obvious, build on those, more of those. Riverwalk, we have the Rest River, it's an asset. And I think we've talked about the downtowns that have a connection to high quality nature. There's statistics that show they just succeed and thrive at a higher degree than those that don't. So can we capture portions of the West River for a public walk? And then the ball fields, of course, we know already exist off of Litchfield Turnpike. How can we connect those or enhance those, or even bring some of that closer into the downtown, the district area that we're talking about? Smaller scale focused activities, bocce, pickleball, like human-sized chess. Maybe there's better suggestions of that, but just trying to get people to think about recreational, organized outdoor activities that could activate places. And then attractions, farmers market, which you already have. Oh my gosh, brain freeze on the farms.
Massaro.
Massaro family farms and other things. Could they be an anchor or a route, to something that's a weekly farmers market or something that, not on Saturdays, because that one's in Westville, but another day of the week or something like that, or Sunday, excuse me. Do we want to see a performance venue down here, right? What does that mean? And walking tours, you all were very inspired by the walking tour that we saw in Ridgefield. So we've already riffed on a few ideas that might come out that we might suggest in our final solutions about walking tours that talk about the unique geology of the area or history, agri-industrial history or other things. Okay.
One thing that could be added to this, because I just had a conversation with my colleague over the weekend. They travel to other people's towns to play disc golf. And disc golf is it's a very, very simple game where you put little baskets. I played in college. We use monuments around the school or buildings or a funky tree or whatever. But it's basically like cans that you throw these little specialized weighted frisbees into. And it's based on a path. It's like golf, but it's very environmentally friendly. And people will come from Monroe to play disc golf in Woodbridge, or you'll go from Woodbridge to play disc golf in Monroe or Oxford. Or it's just maybe a screenshot to throw in there.
I will. I love that. Maybe that takes place at the chest or something, or we split it up, or add a fourth category. But
there's actually a group in Woodbridge that's interested in that. Susan, do you remember when we were on the board, like they came to present it? I think they wanted to use the Elderslie Preserve for disc golf. And I don't know what ended up happening, but there was like an active group of people in town that like want to see that. So that would be cool if you threw a picture on, because that would probably resonate with them.
Because maybe that's a good use for the Thomas Darling property or something. It gets people over there, you set up stuff, it brings people in, and then you can go and utilize the town.
Totally.
And I like it being integrated with some of the walking tours or viewing tours that we've talked about too, right? At different times of year and different seasons, that can be integrated into these seasonal paths or viewing paths or activity paths, I love that idea. That's great. I'll add that. Okie doke. So that's it for the visual preference survey. And then for the sort of more loosely formed kind of brainstorming of catalytic locations. Remember, we kind of briefly in our last meeting talked about some zones that we're seeing that are natural places either to connect to the river in the case of where the river crosses Bradley Road behind the auto repair store, or out down here adjacent to the gas station where there's seems to be access to this property, but this property in recent proposals for housing is going to be accessed off of Merritt Street. Like, are there opportunities here and here to connect to the river and at least begin, and this might be a long-term project, but begin or visualize a river walk, right, along that. We've talked about this connection behind the Katz's building through over to Crest and maybe coming up with some pathway that begins to utilize the old used car sales room, right? That hasn't seemed to be used for a while. Can that be turned into a public property? And it actually gives a face to New England Brewery or whatever will be there, depending on the outcome of that. Nodal points for the trails, the orange here, note the trails and where they come down near Bradley Road. I believe that's correct. Is that correct, Jason? For you and your group? Yeah. Is there a natural nodal point there where some activity could be enhanced or created around that point? And then, of course, Selden Street. There's a lot of imagination around Selden as to whether that should be a focal point street, or conversely, if we decide to just take on Amity Road and front these buildings and move and kind of extend them out and build them up in the way that Kent does with the yellow building that we talked about, could that back edge be activated, but also used for parking and sort of multi-egress to get sort of to use the fronts of the building on Amity for public space instead of for parking, right? If you imagine all those parking lots going from the front of the building to the back of the building, is that a better use if we make Amity Road, if we make it comfortable and feel safe for folks, right? That's a big idea to test in these informal discussion sessions that we'll all have. Okay. And that you'll lean on the consultant team a lot for this, because we'll be sort of suggesting ideas like this that people may not have normally thought about to get reactions, but then also people will have instinctual reactions that then we can deepen and extend based on our professional expertise. Okay. So that's tonight. You can see we got a lot to do, right?
I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's more so that we all kind of get on a comparable page. I don't know that we can anticipate everything. I think the point Chris made earlier about, you're going to have some people who are just going to naysay everything. I mean, that is what it is. Okay. And the conversation that we've all had over the past year about, look, we don't own these properties. We're just trying to generate a kind of way to start thinking about it. Okay. So I think that's all right. But I think we are going to get questions about why we're not dealing with the country club. It's not our charge. That wasn't what we were asked to think about, but that's going to come up. And of course, the flip side of that is the lawsuit. And I think we should all be mindful of the fact that that is at the very earliest possible stage. And none of us should be speculating on where that's going to go.
Susan, if I can make a recommendation in the beginning, I'm going to flip back to the agenda. I suggested that maybe a 2030 member do a welcome and an overview, like a remark. Maybe it would be appropriate for you or for one of the committee members to, in the opening remarks, just set those boundaries really clear, because then it leaves this focus, it leaves all of those things out of this focus from the get-go. I mean, we can do it as well, but might it be better from one of you?
Well, I actually think it would be nice if Chris did the welcome. Okay. He's got a business there,
Thanks, Susan.
But if you want to split it up, that
I don't mind doing it. I'm happy to do it.
If you do that, I think it would be more appropriate for a whole host of reasons. I think mainly because you're a business owner there.
Sure.
I think you should do the introductions. If you then want to turn it over to Laura, and Laura, I think you should set those boundaries. Not that people will abide by them.
Well, that's where we'll take down ideas and we'll say, we'll take down these ideas and share them with the appropriate committee in the town.
But I do think the one question that will come up, and we talked about it at the very beginning, that I think is a very appropriate conversation for this meeting on Thursday is the Toll Brothers property. You know, people are going to say, well, how does that integrate with what we're talking about here?
That's a good point. I was going to bring that up. It's in the center of what we're talking
Right.
about, and it has been approved as far as I understand. So it's going to happen.
So Chris, has it been approved as to design? I don't think so.
I think the project has been approved by town plan and zoning.
Right.
So in terms of the details, there's probably more work to do. I was not at the last meeting. I missed it.
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that, but you know, and I don't know that we can find everything out we need to by Thursday, but we ought to be just mindful. It seems to me, maybe Laura, you can set this tone that, you know, any input that we can have on ways to integrate what we're saying with an actual project. That
Well,
would be.
I went to this August Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting and pushed them to require toll to put sidewalks along Bradley Road and Litchfield Turnpike on both sides to enhance the connectivity. And I also asked for stormwater runoff retention basins to be put underground. They approved the sidewalks. So they agreed to do the sidewalks. So that's going to save the town quite a bit of money. And we're not going to have to spend on doing those sidewalks. We can spend that money out of the sidewalks.
So, my husband's on TPZ and he's planning on coming on Thursday. So if you want, like,
Right.
we can have them get there a little early if there's like something that we wanted to just find out what's, you know, I mean, everything is obviously public. Their meeting minutes are online, but we can ask them like what they're
Yeah, it's not so much what they've done as it is, I want to be responsible in responding to anybody who asks about
Yep.
how these two things integrate, what
Right.
we've done and what this project is.
Well, and also I think we were wondering how economic development overlaps too, because I think that's going to be the first question we get is
Exactly.
how are we different from economic development?
Right.
Where's the overlap? And obviously it would be great if they come and are just as, you know, integral in this meeting as
You want me
we
to ask
are.
Robert if he wanted
Yeah.
to come?
That
I
would be
think
awesome.
Robert was I heard a rumor that Robert was planning on coming, but I do think.
I hope so. I mean, I hope he's invited to come and that
Yeah.
whole committee's invited to come.
Right. And I
It's
do think
important to
in the
have them involved.
introductory- I think in the introductory remarks, it would be nice to talk about how these two committees are sort of flip sides of the same coin to a certain extent.
Yeah.
If Laura, are you comfortable articulating that, or do you want Chris to do it, or do you want me to do it?
We can decide who does what. I think it's easy and it's easy for us to say, here's our project boundaries. And this is all we're dealing with. And then that kind of takes care of the country club property and the lawsuit. If it comes
Good.
up, we'll address it with that same answer. But it could be the Toll Brothers project. I think the purpose of the placemaking and connectivity study is to give some character guidelines for those things. So I'm glad the sidewalks were approved, but we can say things like style of street furniture, which we won't quite get there. We'll get to the intent of it, but we're not speccing anything with our scope of work. It would be nice if their lighting that's along the property edge went with whatever lighting was developed with the downtown. So there's like continuity around those things would be really great. So I can kind of speak to that if it comes up, but I can't speak to like their timing. They're a little bit ahead of us, right? On this. So, but if they're good neighbors and good participants, they should want to riff off of what we're doing and listen to it. It doesn't, it's no challenge to pick a light fixture that is being used everywhere else, for
I
example, to
think,
get to that point.
we're building on the infrastructure, which is going to allow EDC to sort of make some of the things that they're working on go forward. They're working on tax abatements and things like that for, development improvements and things like that. So if we're creating this district and we're putting in the sidewalks, or we're developing this plan, then they can riff on this by saying, these guys are doing the big picture. We're looking at some of the smaller things. If we build this, then we're going to allow you to be able to turn the cat veterinary building into something large by putting a second floor. And if it's $1 million improvement, you may get a $200,000 tax abatement or whatever it may be. But I think it works hand in hand, but they're doing sort of minutia projects and we're doing something that's at a much greater scale.
So Jeremy, do you want to answer that question then about economic development and this committee's work?
Yeah, I can do that. And I'll talk to Robert beforehand and get a real good, hone in.
That'd be
on
great.
it.
Perfect.
And our goal 3 implies an economic development strategy by making a small business managed district. We're really promoting the idea of a managed district here. And that's on purpose because none of this will happen. Nobody will have a place to get your discs for your disc golf or send out the email saying we're having a disc golf tournament if there's not a managed district. It just won't happen. And I think that's why we went to Westville and got so much great information from Lizzie Donius about the work that she does. And just so everyone remembers,
Mhm.
WUVRA is a state line item in the budget. You know what I mean? In the state budget. So there are ways to compensate to make a managed district that's effective, that will actually make all of this work, be that bridge, Jeremy, that you're talking to for economic development. They'll put the structure in place, we'll put the idea in place, and then you need somebody to manage all the activities and keep people coming and keep it thriving, right?
So can I just throw this out to the group for feedback? If I, as a welcome, introduce myself, state that the 2030 committee has been tasked with, and basically what our 2030 tasks are overall. And then the purpose of this meeting is to solicit ideas from all of you to help us come up with ways to enhance Woodbridge's business district. Good, bad?
I would say create a place. We're focusing on place. It's not enhance the business district, because if you don't mind me, Chris, saying it's like revisioning it as a place where people feel safe and connected and welcomed.
Help us
Re-envision.
vision Woodbridge's business district as a place.
Right.
Okay.
So rather than growing up just haphazardly by whoever buys the property and puts something there, this is a slightly more organized, community centric, to pick up on some of Susan's aspirations, which this is a community building effort. We want all of the community members to feel welcome and safe and engaged here.
And then my next thought is, we are focusing on this area only tonight. So while we have other areas in town that are important, our focus tonight is this lower Woodbridge area.
Okay.
The only other thing I would add, Chris, is that the Woodbridge 2030 committee has been tasked with long-range big picture. And that will set Laura up nicely to make the distinction, or whoever makes the distinction between, the sort of day-to-day economic development on behalf of businesses. We're here to sort of dream a little bit. We want you to dream with us, if you will.
That's right, because people will get bogged down and so-and-so owns that property and that's never going to happen. That's okay. That's why we're in the ideal realm, because we have to have a vision for anything to happen.
And I think it's hard for people to accept that and to hear it. So if it's said more than once, I think that's okay.
So I'll talk about the 2030 committee. It has been tasked with more of a long-range, big picture view of where Woodbridge will be in the future. And the year 2030 is kind of a starting point.
Right. I think that gets people's imaginations flowing a little bit as opposed to,
It's not what we're going to do the day after tomorrow.
right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I'll say that. And then,
And then does it go to Jeremy to talk about the difference between economic development and the 2030?
that sounds
I
good.
think we should call on Jeremy if that question comes up.
Okay.
I'm not so sure you want to,
Lay it out.
lay it
Yeah.
out there like that.
That's
Is that
great,
okay?
because then
Yeah.
Chris, when you're done, I'm gonna say, okay, we're here to dream.
Right.
I'm really just gonna take it straight up into
Right.
the
I'll introduce
atmosphere.
you.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
I like that. It builds on the imaginative components.
Yeah. And then I'm going to introduce our team and I'm saying, we're here, Peary Associates is doing this big dream piece. And SLR here is going to take bits and pieces of that dream and make it into a connectivity plan. So the first pieces can be there to be implemented when ready. So I'll even bridge into SLR as being a part of that dream, but also making a framework for implementation of the
Good.
connectivity pieces.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay. Great.
Right.
I think ideally we start around 6:20 because some people have rushed there, from work, and some people will eat and some people won't eat, and we can encourage people to just keep eating. It's not like they're going to miss anything dramatic.
Well, that's why the first 15 minutes too is sort of everybody can just listen and eat and finish their,
Right.
And get settled. Because there's just some information we have to get through at the beginning, right?
Okay.
And
sounds good.
that's a great segue. So we'll start at 6:20 and then that means we'll end around 8-ish. That's perfect. We give them
Yep.
20 minutes and we're about an hour and 40, something like that, hour and 45. We'll end around 8 to 8:10.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty. Any big thoughts that we've missed or ideas that feel like we want to add in or?
I have a couple of questions,
Okay,
mainly for Betsy. In
Go
terms
ahead.
of the people that have been contacted, you have an email list of business owners, is that correct?
So I don't have access to that anymore, but the town does. So the press release went out about this. It was in the town's newsletter. It was also
Okay.
in the newspaper, so the Woodbridge Town News. It's on the homepage of the town website. And then I've shared the press release with all of you. And I know some of you, hopefully all of you, have shared it with your networks.
Okay. All right, so we haven't sent it out to business owners in the area. I'll do a little bit of that tomorrow. I printed off a bunch of the flyers to hand out to people. I didn't want to do it too early because they'll get lost. But this week
Exactly,
you
or
can
they'll
do it.
forget.
Yeah.
Chris,
So
let me
this
ask you a
week-
question. Is it more appropriate to send it out to property owners rather than business owners?
Oh, I've got both.
You got both. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, depends on the property. I'll be honest, I don't even know how to get a hold of the Sasso family in Orange that owns
I can reach out
property
to
on the Amity
Sasso.
Road, which is all essentially vacant right now.
Chris, Betsy and I had Sasso at our EDC meeting, what was it, 3 years ago now, Betsy? Can also reach out to the Parentes, who own
Yep.
214 Amity. So I think those two parties, and those are big properties along
Yeah.
Amity Road. I could try to reach out to, well, you could reach out. I don't know if you want me to reach out to Parati or you could do it. But we could see if, they own the Cat building. Or no, they
Yep.
don't own the Cat building. That's where Parenti owns that building.
No, but you know what? I can reach out to the Parati family about, the Katz's Deli property. you want to reach out to Sasso?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have any contact with him. I can
I
talk
have
to
it
Peter
somewhere, and I know
Parenti.
Steve has it, so I can get that.
Okay.
Just to add on to this conversation, I think it might be helpful. I'm interested in your response. If we say, look, we might be implying things happen on people's property that they own. We're not implying anything specifically. This is really a wild brainstorming session,
Right.
and nothing is meant. Like if we show something on the Crest property, it doesn't mean that there's a taking coming, right?
Well,
This is,
that will be the first time that comes up. We'll make it clear that we're not taking people's property. We're not going to force people to do anything they don't want to do. We're just offering opportunities and ideas.
right. And it's just to give the dreaming a toehold in somewhere. It all, it'll be here, it'll be there. And so just to, in case that comes up, we won't lead with that, or maybe we should lead with that. So we just put that to bed, because people won't let their imaginations run free if they say, oh, well, this property is owned by so-and-so, and that's never going to happen. We're just going to say, like, this is how we say it sometimes with clients. If you don't dream the big idea that seems impossible, there might be one little idea that's nestled in that big idea that's doable, that'll get shut down and not even heard if we don't blow it way up, right?
And the other thing is, we don't want to shut anybody out. And I think you probably should say it,
Okay.
but a little of this imaginative discourse, if you will, we really want residents to embrace it at some level. So maybe that's where the focus really should be, is on, residents who live in the flats, who live up the hill, and I don't know. It just seems to me that, like, it's a little, as I'm thinking about it, it's a slightly different tone when you do it that way.
Can you be more specific, Susan? I want to make sure I'm getting the nuance of what you're saying.
Well, property owners may or may not live in this town, and their agenda is going to be very different than people who do live in the town, potentially. Maybe not, but I mean, it's a different agenda.
Okay.
I think that's sort of where the distinction between EDC and what we're doing, maybe there's some resonance there. I don't know. Not residents, resonance. That was tricky.
Okay.
It's an interesting distinction. I hadn't thought about it before. Anyway, go ahead.
Yep. That's just getting to all the stakeholders, right?
Right,
Really,
right,
just
right.
acknowledging all the stakeholders.
Thank you.
But I
Better
like that
definition
you're
myself.
bringing, I like that we're bringing in property owners, but we don't want any of those definitions to block anybody's imagination, right?
Right. Or to make anybody nervous.
Or make anyone nervous or make
Right.
anybody angry. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to throw the doors wide open so great ideas can come forward, because we might brainstorm an idea at this location and it's perfect for that location, which somebody's into doing, right? So the ideas are just high and flying and will find root.
Right.
All the appropriate details are worked out, but we shouldn't let that stop the dreaming, right?
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
Good.
All right, great. Any last thoughts?
I don't think so.
The flyers. Got some tasks.
Good.
If you guys had to guess how many things, because Betsy, this is a practicality I have to talk to you about. How many copies of things should we bring? I hate to make 80 sets of stuff if we're really only going to get 30 people. I hate to only have 30 if 50 show up, do you guys have an instinct about who might really show?
I think 50 would be safe. What do you think?
I agree.
And if worst comes to worst, people can share.
That'll be a good problem to have.
No, gee, we thought we're so glad you're all interested.
Chris,
You said 50. I think 50 is a good number.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris, do you have an 11x7 copier in your store?
I don't have an 11x17 copier, unfortunately.
Okay.
I can.
I don't know if the brewery has one.
If we had to run out and make copies, that.
I'm sure town hall does, but they'll be closed by then.
Right, well, we'll just do 50 and we'll just,
See, this is why we need, it's bad that the UPS store is closing.
yeah.
Closed,
You know what?
unfortunately,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
You know what we can do? We'll make 50 packets, but we'll bring an extra 10 or 20 of the survey sheet and people can share the reference images,
Exactly.
right? But we'll bring one extra of the extra sheets because that's not like making a packet of 6 sheets. It's just bringing one extra sheet.
Okay.
And the trace, we have tons of it, the markers, the stickers, all that doesn't matter. So that's all good. So it's just how many of those packets to make.
I have a portable printer that I could bring, but it would be 2030 by the time it actually did. the pages. I mean, it's so slow.
Oh, boy.
Cranks it out like this. Okay.
I think that's what we'll do. We'll bring extra just of the survey sheets and then people can share the image sheets if we are
Yeah.
so lucky to have that issue.
Yeah, makes
All right,
sense.
good.
D plus. Survey. Right, great.
Anything else we need to do?
Think
We're too
so.
tired to approve minutes, Betsy. We're not going to do that.
That's
I
fine. I'll
agree.
let it
I
fly.
concur. Next time.
All right. See everybody on Thursday.
Great.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you guys.
Thanks.
We're
Thank you
excited.
all.